Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show, and I'm super excited about this. I've been looking forward to this and asking questions specifically of Jonathan and how and why he's got to where he is. How can he benefit you as a listener so you can advance in your desires and your goals in creating your dreams, making your dreams become a reality. So Jonathan Fodera, he is the founder of Integrated Business Finance. He's helped tons and tons of people get to the point where they can make their dream a reality. And so that's why I brought him on here. Lives out in Tampa, has got a few kids. But Jonathan, share with us a little bit about where you came from, how you got to where you are, and why did you make those choices to end up where you are?
Well, it's a long journey with a lot of potholes. So I came out of college not knowing what I wanted to do. I did some, I thought I wanted to work on Wall Street because most of my family worked on Wall Street. Started with like a class of, let's just say 80 people. And after about 7-8 months, there was only 2 of us left. I was commuting 2 hours in, 2 hours home each day. I was miserable. And long story short, I got recruited randomly to be an underwriter for a fintech company. Fintech is just finance and technology. Decided I was going to do that because the commute would have been less. I was very, very good at that. But then there was another issue. I've always worked very, very hard. And the opportunity for advancement, the opportunity to earn more money really wasn't there unless I moved into sales. So I decided I was going to move into sales. Did that. I did really, really well at it. And I did it probably for 2 or 3 years. And then all of a sudden, when you're an entrepreneur, sometimes you don't really dictate, or the company you work for wants to change your pay. And so they did that, and I decided it was time to leave. Went out. One of my main clients I was serving wanted me to be their sales director, so I did that. Found out it was not aligned with my intentions, so I learned a lot from working on the outside from a marketplace perspective. But there was issues there with the company because, I was a minority owner and he was embezzling. So I decided leave, went back. I went back to the first original company and they gave me a new role with equity, everything you could want. And part of that was they were acquired recently and they wanted me to build direct sales. Well, the company that acquired them decided to go out and acquire a very, very large broker to do direct sales instead. So 2 weeks before my options were going to vest, they cut me and the entire team loose. Mind you, at this point, my wife is pregnant with our first child. We had a house under contract that we were really happy about, which we had to cancel. I had to find a home for my entire team. I did that with another fintech company. Brought my team there and realized that they were messing around with pay too. So I finally decided I was going to rebrand, build something that was very, very client focused, do it my way, incorporate every program under the sun, and base it around educating business owners, supporting business owners. So that's kind of what led me here today. There was a couple other hiccups there. Those were the main ones, and those are the ones I can speak about on the air. And that's what led me here is I kind of realized that for me to control my own destiny and for me to make the impact I want to make, I have to create it. I can't do it working with somebody or for somebody else. And so I learned everything I could. I focused on my end user, which is a small business owner, and I put myself in their frame of mind. What do they need? How can I serve them best? And that's how I reverse engineered everything to come up with integrated business financing. And that's where I'm at today, and I enjoy it. I love it. And that's how I got here.
Awesome. So quick question, just, and we can ask this, I wait to ask it, but do you see yourself here forever, or is this just like you see it have an exit strategy over the next 10 years that you move on to another endeavor?
That's a very challenging question. And it's challenging because there's so much rapid change in technology, right? I'd love to say that this is what I'm going to do forever. And I do believe I've done it for 15 years. This is what I'm meant to do. This is what I'm really good at. And this is where I make a great impact. However, who's to say that there's some new AI or something that comes out that can almost replicate what we do? I know and I understand people still want to speak with a person, but there are so many changing technologies that it is very, very challenging to forecast, let's say, the next 10 years, next 15 years.
Does that make it difficult for when you're analyzing the value of your company? If you were to go sell your company, does that also make it difficult to sell because it's something that has an uncertain future? Or do people, and I'm asking this because I have no idea, when you're buying a business that has a changing landscape like that, does that decrease the value proposition, or does that just say it doesn't matter, we're just going to assume it's going to be good, and then if we bought a that sucks?
I don't think it changes, right? So my goal was not to build this company to sell it, right? That's something that you should always think about, because if you do decide to sell it and you didn't build it to sell, then it's problematic and you're not going to get nearly what you want out of it. However, I think you can ask that same question to everybody and no one can tell you the answer. So for the time being, it's going to be based on what the value is today. And all I can do is work towards continuing to build that value by making the largest impact I possibly can.
Okay. I like it. So I'm going to go back. Thank you for answering that. So if we go back to college, pre-college, how many siblings do you have? Like, what's your family structure look like before you were married?
Very interesting. So I have two brothers. I'm sorry. I would tell everyone I have 3 brothers and a sister. The truth is I have 1 biological brother, 1 sister, and I've had 2 cousins that had lived with us up till birth because, my aunt was the one that would watch us while my mom was working on Wall Street. So I consider them, my brothers, and that was the makeup of my family growing up. My mom and dad were divorced, and no one really knew because my dad still came out on the weekends. And that was up until I was, in college. That was the makeup or structure of my family. So
nobody knew that your parents were divorced, like in the community and stuff?
It wasn't a secret. It's just my dad was always around on the weekends, so they just figured,
Interesting. That's So, and what did he do for work while you were growing up?
He did a lot of odds and ends. My dad, he was an alcoholic, so functioning alcoholic. He no longer drinks. He changed, thank God. But that impacted. At one point, he worked on Wall Street, and then after he left Wall Street, he picked up odds and ends, whether it's driving a truck or Tropicana routes. It was not, my mom was a breadwinner, always.
Sure. So then with the, and you mentioned this before, like with the Wall Street background of your parents, were you the only one of the 3 that chose to end up in Wall Street? And yes. What was the drive? Are you the oldest, middle child? Like, what was the drive for you to end up in Wall Street versus somebody else? Why didn't you do something else?
That's a great question. So I was the oldest out of everybody. And not only my parents, but my grandfather and some of my uncles worked on Wall Street. And so I just thought, hey, that's what you do. That's where you want to end up. And I honestly can say I hated it, between the commute, high frequency trading, and that industry, some of that has changed dramatically over the years. Wall Street, there's so many different things that you can do there. It's not, they were government bond traders. Most people won't even know what that is. But it's not the same as it was in the 90s when I was growing up.
Sure. So what was the point? 2 hours both ways. It sounds like one of those old stories. There's like uphill, snowy, windy, both ways home from school. Not to discredit it. I believe you because I've been in traffic too. But what I want to get at is you did that for a while before there was a day when you said, this is insane. Like what was going on that like the final decision was, this is insane. Like finally there's a question, why are people doing this? Like what was going on at that time?
Well, I was taking the train and then I had to take the subway, right? I lived in, East Long Island, and I was commuting the Long Island Railroad in. And I will tell you that I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I just knew I wanted to change. I didn't know where to go. I actually didn't realize what I wanted to do truly until I started my own business, until I started a marketplace.
And that's right. Multiple years down the road of multiple other jobs.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was all in finance, technology, and sales.
Sure.
Right? But I didn't put it all together and really, truly figure it out until my late 20s. And I'm 36 now.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I want to highlight is people are so, again, you were told, and not necessarily told, maybe you were told verbally by your grandpa and uncles and parents that this is what you should do. But even if you weren't told that verbally, the message was still passed on by example of like, this is what we do, right? There's a certain way of being, and this is the way we be in this family. And so as a result of that, you become what you believe the way of being is supposed to be. And then there's a time when it's like, this doesn't actually align with my individual nature. That's one of the main focuses of this podcast is what does it get to? What has to happen for you who's listening to say, look, why am I living somebody else's life? Yeah. This doesn't, and maybe, and this is what's interesting, as you mentioned, when it was what it was 30 years ago when they were doing it and they had their career, maybe it was the best thing at that time, but the same career just isn't the best career anymore. And so because times change, we have to be willing to accept that we aren't going to do what the people think we should do around us, and be strong enough and have the foreshadowing of like, look, I understand why you think I should still be doing what you're doing. And also, I love and respect you, and I'm going to go step off and do my own thing. At that point, were you married already when you left Wall Street? So it was just you that was going to get impacted.
Correct. I left early. I was probably 22, 23. And I'll tell you, my parents never told me, hey, do this. This is what I want you to do. Every inclination that I had to work on Wall Street was caught, not taught. Right. So I saw everyone in the family doing that. I thought I wanted to do that. Okay. And after I tried it, I really didn't like it. And I will tell you, I did sales and worked in finance and technology for probably 7, 8, 9 years before I actually put together why I wanted to do what I created. And it's freeing, it's liberating, and it feels good when everything that you do is aligned, right? And it does take time to realize that. And what I did was I actually thought about what the impact is of what we do. So when I help a business owner, right, get financing or grow or do anything towards that, of that nature, what we're really doing, what my team is really doing is not just helping that individual entrepreneur. What we're doing is we're helping their family, all their employees' families, and we're helping the surrounding community have a business, because the backbone of our country is small business. And I feel like the last couple of years, small business owners have been under attack from different things.
Sure. Yeah. And you're not the only one that feels that way, for sure. And I'm grateful to have you on here because I feel very similarly. I like to work with a similar client to help them really realize their dreams and believe that it's possible. There's so many people, they just don't believe it's possible for them. And that's, I have a book called the Fuel Fuel Your Legacy, the 9 pillars to building a meaningful legacy. And the first 2 people I talk about in there, or groups or subsets of people, are one, your haters. They're the first group, the people who are telling you they can't do it and actively trying to dissuade you. But the second group, which is almost more debilitating, can be, is somebody who believes that you can do it, but that they can't, right? They have this limiting belief that it's possible for another small business owner to get funding or to win or to launch their business, take it from, a small mom and pop shop to a multi-million-dollar business. It can happen for somebody else, but it just can't happen for me. And you have to get past that believer, non-believer status to really launch. So I'm grateful for what you're doing. One of the things you mentioned here, so you got into the fintech underwriting, and then again, what was the moment where you realized, and you kind of mentioned it, but was there a specific circumstance where it's finally that day where you're like, you know what, I'm capped out here. Like, I cannot grow my potential. There's more potential inside of my soul than what is on display. How do I make that transition? And you chose to go into sales. You could have done something else, but the question is not what the outcome was. Obviously the outcome was sales, but what was the question? It's like, why there's more inside of me?
Well, most of my early decisions were money motivated, right? So there's no denying that, right? That's why I wanted to go to sales. When I was in underwriting, I had someone that was micromanaging. He didn't understand or know that he was micromanaging, but he did it. And then I looked and found out that some of the people that I was working with, and I was doing 2 or 3 times more work, they were getting paid 2 to 3 times more. And I was just a young kid that really had no control, and I was going to be one of those guys that would get 3 or 5% raises each year. That was never okay with me. So when I realized that sales was a way that I can control my destiny, control my income, obviously it's a little bit more stressful. However, that's what I wanted to focus on. That's what I did. And then I think the next level to that, after you're done chasing money, you're chasing impact. Because if you make the impact, if you make the difference, the money will always follow no matter what you do. You could be sweeping floors or have a janitorial service. It doesn't matter. If you're making a big enough impact, the money will always follow. So I started focusing on impact. And I know that in sales, when I was working for somebody else, there was only a limited number of programs that I could help a business owner with. Well, a business owner building their business, you can't just do it with one program, right? It's like you're gonna open up and build a house and all they give you is a hammer. That doesn't work, right? You need a ton of different tools, and you need to know when and where to implement them. You need to know how to get them at the best cost and the best programs, and how to incorporate those into building that house or building your business. So I focused on learning, I focused on relationships, and I focused on ultimately making the biggest impact, the biggest difference I can for my clients. And that's how we got here. Now, could I have done that under somebody else's roof? Probably not. Probably not.
Let's just pause there because I want to highlight this question. The question that he's asking himself is, how can I make a bigger impact for my client? The result of that question means he can't work for somebody else who's controlling his pay, his options that he can provide for those clients. Because the question is, how can I make a bigger impact for my constituents? It might be, how can you make a bigger impact for your family? How can you make a bigger impact for your children, your wife? How can you make a bigger impact for your religion? How can you make a bigger impact for your community or your client if you're a business owner? And that question, it's going to be a different answer for everybody. For his was, which we'll talk about in a minute, what he does, but asking yourself that question is a transformational question, I think. And it's going to lead everybody to a different answer. Anyways, sorry.
And I want to just point out, right? We're just talking about impact and legacy in business, right? Which is the focus here. However, there's many other facets to anyone's life. You have your faith, your fitness, your finances, that goes right in what you do. Mm-hmm. Okay? Faith, family, fitness, finances, there's the 4. And all of those are very important. Like, for me, we talk about legacy. it's important to give my kids all the tools and to teach them all the things that I've learned, right? Because I want them to go out and make the biggest impact they can in the world, right? And same thing, like fitness. I will tell you, I'm not a fitness pro, okay? But to operate at a certain level, you want to be physically fit. And faith, like whatever your beliefs are, it needs to be aligned, and you have to be in congruence with that. For me, I'm Catholic, okay? And I want, the Ten Commandments, I want to treat people the way I want to be treated. And that carries over into business. And what I've learned is if you can consistently improve and work on perfecting those 4 areas, it will shine through. If you let one of those areas slip, it will impact everything else that you do. And you will not be able to leave the legacy that you want to leave.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's funny, like your story of the tool belt and the options, that was exactly my story in a different industry. I did summer sales, door-to-door selling pest control. I went to school for neuropsychology, wanted to help a demographic of people, which I love helping them. And then was doing summer sales to kind of put myself through school. And that's when I realized, again, just looked around and said, how can I make the biggest impact? Because if I go do this neuropsychology, it's going to take me 13 years. I'm going to be at $300,000 worth of debt, 13 years away from making any money. And not only that, I'm going to be stuck repairing problems. There's no preventative maintenance in the psychology realm. Or I shouldn't say no, that's probably overgeneralization. There's very little, okay? A lot of it is reparative. I was like, dude, why am I going to spend 13 years to not make any money, be in debt, to be reparative? What's the issues here? What's the issues? And so I did the research, found out that financial literacy was the number one. Like, I shouldn't say number one. It's very common in all the social issues, anxiety, depression, domestic violence, divorce. All these issues are alleviated when financial literacy is there. And there's confidence that somebody can provide for themselves, and they don't have to be codependent, but they can be either independent or intradependent. That mindset shifts help people make better decisions and helps each other treat each other better. So I said, okay, I'm changing what I'm doing. At the same time, I'm doing summer sales. And like the top of a neuropsychology degree, you're making $200,000, maybe $300,000 a year. And then in 3 months, I make $100,000 selling door-to-door pest control. I'm like, I'm unemployable right now. Like inflation, this isn't going to work out, So it was like a combination of that sucks. But then I ultimately left that industry for exactly the same reason. When you're knocking doors and you're selling one product and one service, and you can represent one company, and you've got 6 other competitors out there, and you know them, you know their services, and you knock on a door that you can provide maybe an 80% value to that client, but there's another company that can provide 100%. In my mind, it's then unethical to sell your product to them. Like, you just shouldn't do it. Even if it's going to feed your family, you shouldn't do it because it's not right. And so then that's where it's like, I didn't like the ethical dilemma of, multiple things here. One, you're pushing a product to feed your family that you don't fully believe in, or at least you believe that something else would be a better fit. I don't like having my hands tied like that. Number 1. 2, for me was a large part of the fact that my goal was to teach financial literacy, but you're on the door-to-door sales situation. Your goal is to make like structured everything you do on a door-to-door sales pitch. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's a great industry. I have nothing wrong with it, but your goal is to help them make a decision in 3 to 5 minutes without considering whether it's a good financial decision or not, without any consultation, because you know that everybody has 30, 40 bucks in their money a month that they don't know where it's going, and you can take that. Okay. And that's a fact. Okay. If you think in business, you charge somebody 30, 40 bucks for just about anything, they've got the money to spend, then they'll do it. That doesn't mean that you should take their money every time though. And that's where I was like, nah, it's just not aligned. As you say, it wasn't aligned with who I believed I should be. It was a great stepping stone, but wasn't aligned. And so I really appreciate you kind of highlighting that of the alignment. I want to talk next about, and this is a concept that maybe gets lip service occasionally, but doesn't, I feel like very few people can really articulate it unless they've experienced it. I haven't experienced it. My only jobs I've ever had was working for Blue Beacon Truck Wash, Pizza Hut for 3 months. That didn't last very long. I did not like being in the food industry. Door-to-door sales, sort of, but you're a 1099 contractor and pretty independent. I think that's my only jobs that I worked for somebody W-2. And so my question is, being an intrapreneur versus an entrepreneur. I only really have experience being an entrepreneur. I've been doing it for so long. I love it. I don't really know what it would be like to be an intrapreneur, and what the differences are, and when is a good fit to say, no, you should probably stick to being an intrapreneur versus when is that switch that says, yeah, you're better off being an entrepreneur.
So I actually just had this conversation recently, and the truth of the matter is it boils down to where you're at, right? So do we get, or this isn't just audio, right? This is visual here?
That's video.
Okay. So I'll try to show you guys. See that back there?
Huh?
Those are what our core values are right here. So I hire, fire, reward, reprimand on those core values. Everyone that comes in upholds those core values. Everyone that works for me knows that they have an opportunity to make a huge impact for the American small business owner, right? Help our country, help small business, help these families, help these communities. Everyone's aligned with that. Our team is very close in. And so, and no one on my team is capped. People can make as much money as value they provide.
Right.
Okay. So the situation I set up, because of the experiences I've had in the past, I would rather come here and work for me. And I'm not saying that like arrogantly. I legitimately, if I could not play the CEO and I could just do sales and make an impact and chase and not worry about everything else that I have to do, everything would be gravy.
Right.
And so there are certain situations where you can find the right people, the right team, the right company, and you never want to leave. And you know what? You will make just as much, if not more, than if you started something yourself without the stress and without taking the risk. Now, the challenge is how many people actually provide, right? I paid a tremendous amount of money to learn from the best people in personal development and business I could. Andy Frisella, Ed Milet, and a whole bunch of others. And I implemented everything they taught me, and it's made a giant difference. Not many entrepreneurs have done that. Not many entrepreneurs think from their client's point of view or from their team members' point of view, right? So what happens is a lot of people decide to start their own because they've had these bad experiences. That's what's happened with me. However, if you can find a place where you can make a very good impact, very large impact, make a good income, and you can control your own destiny, why would you leave to take the risk? So to me, it just depends on where you're at in the process. And if you found a good home or not. If you have a good home, you're paid well, you're making a difference in the world, and you are happy, stay there. If you are struggling to find that, which most people do, and this is not, I'm not tooting my own horn. I was a horrible person to work for a very long time. I changed. When you can do that, and when you find that place, if you're happy, you're happy. That's where you want to stay. That's where you want to build. If you don't, then that's probably when you want to explore becoming an entrepreneur. Now, here's a couple things, a couple really good tips. Once you get the idea that you want to become an entrepreneur, all right, I'm going to give you guys some free game here, some free advice that'll really, really help you. Number one, start the entity. Number two, start building your business credit. Number three, make sure your credit is as high as humanly possible. Okay? And then I want you to put together as best you can all the systems, the plans, the marketing, and start promoting that company, even while you're at your current place of employment. And start testing and trying to get some revenue in and figure out how you're going to approach the market and have some case studies, get some reviews before you even leave your job. Okay. And then when the time comes to leave, get yourself a term loan, basically a personal loan, if you want. Fund the company, because the first year to 2 years is very, very difficult to get financing. Okay. It's usually suboptimal. So you want to put as much in place as you can to be stable and to build your systems, processes, the company before you leave. Too many people exit. Too many people have poor credit when they start a business. And there is a certain value in bootstrapping, but you don't have to bootstrap a business with a gun to your head, right? And that's the truth, because it'll be harder and harder to do and accomplish what you need to do. So plan it out, think it out. You can put a lot of put a lot of pieces in place for free. Okay, I go through this on YouTube all the time. Put those structures in place, test, work on your systems, start getting some business, start getting some reviews, and then when you're ready to cut over, make that switch, cut over and make that switch.
Okay, I love it. Thank you. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, go back and re-listen to that, because I would agree with everything you just said. I have a question, follow-up question to this is, again, just because one of my goals here is to create clarity, so we all know we're having the same conversation. If we're talking about intrapreneur versus entrepreneur, but let's talk about like, I'm sitting here thinking about this myself, because I'm in different organizations at different levels. And some of my businesses, maybe I would say, are entrepreneurs, and some of them are intrapreneurs. So if you're part of like a franchise, you own a McDonald's, you own a 7-Eleven, you're something like that, would you consider that an intrapreneur venture or an entrepreneur venture?
Man, that's a tough question.
I know. That's why I'm like, where's...
I've never thought about that, but you are an entrepreneur, because at the end of the day, everything you do drives what's going to happen, right? With the company, you still have your own company, but you're operating somebody else's game plan, right? I'll give you an example. I opened up 2 gyms. I recently just closed them. It was a franchise. It was a horrible investment, and I shut them down. I was an entrepreneur. Now, I was running their game plan, and then I realized the game plan there were some holes in the boat, right? So I shut it down, lost a lot of money, but learned some valuable lessons. And it wasn't all, a lot of it was me too, because I don't have the time to run a financial company and, be at a gym. I thought that was passive. There's a difference between passive and active, right? So in that case, you would be an entrepreneur. Now, what's a good example of an intrapreneur that runs their own show? Like if you're anything revolving around the 1099, right? You can make as much as you want, but you're going to basically keep or eat what you kill. Okay? Whether you have a basic,
like a broker, a real estate broker,
correct,
a real estate agent for Remax may be an intrapreneur, although there's sky's the limit, they're basically eating what they kill for Remax, and they're getting a high commission for it, rather than owning their own brokerage, saying, no, I'm now competing with Remax. I'm on my own thing.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to create clarity there. It's not something that, because I haven't been both, or I didn't think of myself as both, then that's where I'm like, where do we draw this line? And I think that there's some crossover. I don't know that there's a lot of crossover of intrapreneur into the entrepreneur land, but I think you could be the general manager, or maybe own one business, and you're not really even a business owner. You're just like, you own your job. And then there's a difference between, but you're still taking all the risk. So like, you're the entrepreneur side of all the risk, but you really just own your job. And then there's a business owner who's like going and building something for a bigger purpose. And this is where I would say entrepreneurism, this is how I would separate it. Again, it's why I'm having a conversation. So I'm like, okay, where am I off base, or where am I on base, or just different? But one of your goals is not even your financial company. Like what you do, the product you're providing, yeah, it's a product and it's a needed product, but what drives what you're doing, from my understanding in the conversation and learning about you, is that you have a belief that small businesses are under attack to a degree, and that you want to help small businesses flourish in our country because they're the lifeblood of America.
Yep.
And because of that belief, because of that end, you might find yourself where you are right now in the fintech world or in the lending world, but you could also find yourself in any other industry that's promoting that end goal.
I'll support it, but this is my wheelhouse, right? So you want to make the impact you want to make, but you want to do what you're good at, right?
Sure.
15 years of building the right relationships, learning the ins and outs. That's my strong suit. Sales, team building, relationships, that's my strong suit. I wouldn't try to go and make the impact I want to make with that have me use other skills. Okay. And then back to the entrepreneur, think about it this way. If you're an entrepreneur, you take all the risk, all of it.
Right.
Right. How many employees do you have? Right. That's another way to think of it. Because you could own a business, have an LLC, you have 0 employees or 1 employee, or you and an assistant. Technically, you're an entrepreneur, yes, you're taking all the risk, but you don't have a big team, right? I have 10 people that depend on me to put food on the table. I have another I have another 14 people outside that act as agents or advisors for my company, right? If the company fails, they get hurt. So that is how I would perceive that. Those are kind of some of the distinctions and differences.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And that leads into when you, what was it? When you left one of your companies and finally said when your whole team was fired, right? When that division of that company that you were at became obsolete, you didn't just go look for another job for yourself. You said, hey, where can my team go? Because at that point you are leading your own kind of entrepreneur venture under somebody else while they're taking the risk. Somebody else taking all the risk, but you're still leading. The leadership risk is with you.
Yeah, but I wasn't signing their checks, right? So I had to negotiate the best I could for the entire group and myself and just bolt this onto another fintech company. But at the end of the day, I was every bit an entrepreneur. I had 0 control over what their decisions were besides my own input. At the end of the day, that's not being an entrepreneur. That's 100% being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I agree. But then when you did leave that and finally start your own thing, how many of those team members followed you into your entrepreneur journey?
There was definitely a few of them did. Some of them left the industry, right? So when you have sort of a rocky, let's say 12 month period where company A doesn't do the right by you, company B doesn't do right by you, I have to go start my own company. That's definitely challenging to ask people to do, right? Yeah. So some came, but you also have to remember, I probably wasn't as well capitalized as I could have been. Starting a business has a ton of costs that people do not think about.
Yeah. Well, so I just want to touch on this last thing and we're going to wrap things up, but you mentioned something about your core values and you kind of mentioned it in passing, but I just want from an entrepreneur perspective, because this is, as I've stepped into more an entrepreneur role, it's the hardest part for me. I like, my heart does not enjoy the business side of hiring, firing people. Like that is like talent acquisition. I'm much rather like acquire people who I like to be around, but then sometimes the people you like to be around aren't as productive as they need to be. And so then you have to like, hey, we're good friends, but you can't work for me anymore. Yeah. And there's like this weird balance, especially when you're not like a big corporation, but you're really running a very close, tight-knit core of people. As soon as somebody in that tight-knit core of people, although you're all friends, they stop being beneficial to the core. You got to make decisions. And so you mentioned you hire, fire, reward, and reprimand all based off core values. Go a little bit, if you're willing to, go into more detail about like what that process looks like. How do you ultimately make those decisions? And I'm sure it's a wide range of outcomes there, but talk a little bit more about that.
There's a ton of them, right? So the first one is make an impact, right? So just going to hiring, I will ask questions trying to figure out how important it is for them to make an impact, right? Kind of like this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When I reward or raise, that might be a reason why. Or if I take everybody out, let's say Friday night, they want to have cigars or something. Why am I doing that? Well, because one of them probably made a giant impact, right, in some business owner's life. So I use those things accordingly. Same thing with if it's something negative where, hey, this person didn't make an impact. Somebody has a bad month. Hey, one of our core values is making an impact. Did you make an impact this month? You know, the next one, educate. Like, I am a big believer, similar to you, in education. So one of the things that the typical entrepreneur is missing is education on how money works, how taxes work, how lending works, right? Same thing in school. I'm 90%, I don't even want to give statistics, but let's just say this. Most people are set up to fail intentionally. Okay, the important stuff in school is not taught. It is not taught intentionally. All right, those are facts, right? You didn't learn taxes. You didn't learn how to balance a checkbook. You didn't learn about borrowing. You didn't learn about investing in school. Okay, and you probably learned, if you did learn anything in there or in college, from a textbook from people that haven't done shit. Okay, they haven't accomplished anything in their lives, right? And so how are you supposed to succeed when you're not being taught the right things? Okay, that's one of the impacts I try to make with my children. All right, I try to show them how money works. Robert Kiyosaki has a great game, Cash Flow. Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome game.
My whole childhood, the kids version, the 101, the 202.
I'll tell you this, I don't like the kids version as much. And my kids actually like the adult version, and they're 5 and 8. So the adult version is, but it's a very, very.
Do you let them use the app, or do you make them fill out the paper?
I didn't know there was an app. You just changed my.
Well, our rule is, so the game can go a lot faster with the app. So we play with the app as adults, but if it's somebody's first time, they have to fill out the paper. Like, you got to learn the income sheet. You got to learn adding, subtracting, where stuff's moving.
Yeah, of course. But now that I know that there's an app, I'm going to do it that way because it's tedious. Not that they shouldn't learn how to do that. I agree 100%.
They need to learn how. They need to learn how, but it's tedious. And it's like, dude, this game could be over in half the time, and we could play it 3 times. The other thing that I wish that he would change, and I don't know if it's him or whoever, but like, you need to have like an ever evolving deck of cards. Cause once you know all the cards, then
Yeah, I agree.
So those are like the 2 main things. And then there needs to be another option in the app to put in your own data to create your own real situation. So that's the third thing.
That would be cool, but that would not. Well, we'll get to that.
Anyways, so we're getting sidetracked, but
yeah. So back to the core value stuff, right? Win, win, win. So I want to win for our clients, a win for us, and if there's a partnership involved, a win for the partner, right? Nobody likes a one-sided deal.
Agreed.
It's got to work for everybody. And so there's a whole, like, transparency and trust is another one. So when people exemplify those things, or I can pick that up, or I get that feeling from them, I ask a little bit more. If they show that in their time in the office, I try to reward and praise that. If they do something that is against the core values, I point that out. And I will fire based on that too. Okay, so that's how you ingrain it into your culture. It's a lot easier said than done. It takes practice. But the first step is writing them down, putting them on the site, getting them made up where everyone can see them. The next is constantly talking about it and ingraining it into the company culture.
Sure. Hey, well, I appreciate that. So now we've kind of danced around it, but your focus is helping business owners like ultimately win in business. A large part of that is being able to be financially stable during the process of growing. You gave them great insight, I think. When you decide you want to become an entrepreneur, get your entity. Don't wait to get your entity. Get your entity. Some people are like, well, I need to make a certain amount of money before I get the entity. No, you don't. It's $15 or something silly. Go get your entity. It doesn't cost anything to have. It doesn't really cost that much to run. Entity is important. Business credit, personal credit, just go learn about it. Is there a way that you like, do you educate, just have like online courses that just teach people about this? Cause I think, like you mentioned, it's intentionally not in school and everybody needs to understand it.
Yeah, I have it all. I have a lot of it on YouTube, right? So if you go to integrated business financing on YouTube, you'll see a ton of stuff, a ton of interviews. There's so much you can pick up, and you could just search like business credit or like, let's say, equipment financing if you want to learn about it. Whatever you want to learn about, it's all there. And then I have a group that I do a little bit more one-to-many coaching, but they can ask questions and I can analyze their business and kind of show them things that they need to do. And it's stupid cheap. It's like $200 or $300 a month. It's not even.
Awesome.
I just do it to help promote it.
Right. And I want to highlight something you just mentioned that I think we didn't highlight enough. But you mentioned that going on Wall Street was caught, not taught, right? A lot of this stuff, if you just consume their content, you can catch success. You don't always have to go be taught it directly. Now, there's certain times where a facilitator can take your education and like 10x how quick you catch stuff because you're being a lot more intentional about what you're supposed to catch and what you're not supposed to catch, or how to implement what you caught. I mean, that's a whole nother thing. Like AI is it's insane to me, and I'm learning it and I'm just like going everywhere. And it's like, wait a second, what do I need to catch? How do I implement what I'm learning? Because there's so many applications, you're going to get lost.
I would be careful too, because there's a distinct bias there.
In AI?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Distinct is being generous. So there's a bias in AI.
Yeah. There's a very distinct bias there. But to your point, right? You can learn a lot, and most of it you can get for free, right? On the flip side, knowledge without action is useless. Okay. Absolutely. And there are certain things that you can't teach. You can't teach heart. You can't teach will. You can't teach determination. Right? That's what I look for. Like business owners, that's what you need, because you're going to get the living shit kicked out of you no matter how much you know. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Everyone deals with it.
Good mentors. Like I recently went through an interesting business experience, and my initial inclination is this sucks. I intellectually know that somebody else has gone through the hell that I went through, but it's like when you're going through it, it doesn't matter if somebody else has gone through it, it just feels bad. But when you can call up your mentors and they're super positive and they're like, look, I went through that and I went through this and this and this, and I made it out to the other side, and this is where I am today. Keep going, keep your head up, keep doing what you know works. Having that mentor, you can listen to YouTube videos, but I'm telling you, having the phone number of somebody, it's worth the 10,000, 100,000, whatever you're paying a mentor, I think, to help you keep your head straight through the process of entrepreneurship. That's what I've chosen to, I say invest in myself. Most of the investment in myself was helping somebody else or paying somebody else to not hold me accountable, but to be there as I chose to be accountable to them and to inspire me to take the next step, even when I didn't feel like it. And that's the value of a mentor for me, is not that I couldn't have learned, that they're giving all their stuff away for free, but for them to be there when you don't want to keep doing it, when it's hard to keep doing it. That's what mentors are really, really valuable for. Anyways, I'm sure you have a similar outcome, and knowing who you've worked with, they're phenomenal leaders.
Yep.
And inspiring. So understanding personal business credit, I think that doesn't matter if you want to be an entrepreneur or not. You got to understand how the world operates. You got to understand it. Start promoting first, and then get some case studies and reviews before you go step out on your great advice. If you want to know more about these topics, and maybe you're a business owner already and you're like, man, it would have been really nice to have started properly. I didn't start properly. Now I want to go rectify some of that stuff. That's what Jonathan's going to help you do. Make sure that you can have the breathing room, just like you said. Hey, let's just put the gun away. Let's figure out how can we it's hard enough, guys. It's hard enough. How do we take the gun out, put it away, calm the freak down, and say, okay, what's the best step forward? And oftentimes the best step forward is not the Dave Ramsey approach. It's not. Sometimes it is. Most of the time, you say, no, it's not. Here's the thing. If you're working a $40,000 a year job and that's all the money you're ever going to make, dude, Dave Ramsey's great for you. if you have any aspiration to do anything else with your life, grow, develop, become a more powerful, impactful human, search for people doing that. That's all I like. We'll leave it there. But anyways.
That's not to discredit him. He has
he's got some
methods of paying off debt, and he's clearly done some things that have worked.
Exactly.
But there's a lot of power in other people's money and making the delta between what it costs you and what your return is. That's all I'm going to tell.
Well,
That's all I'm going to do.
And I'm a firm believer, and I talk about this. Debt is one, the whole country operates on it. Like literally the Federal Reserve lends money to the government. So that's the nature of our currency, is it says it on the note. Okay, so that's what it is. But it's a trust. When somebody stops trusting you, they send you to collections, they stop charging you interest, it's done. Okay. The fact that somebody's trusting you and your ability to pay it off, even when you feel like you can't, the fact that they still trust you, that should give you confidence to go freaking do something about it. So it's a huge trust. If you go walk into it that way, one of your core values, right? Transparency and trust. If you walk into the experience knowing, hey, this is a trusting relationship because of what I'm going to provide, I can trust me and I can count on me, then that's what you're doing, right? When you're going in and you're looking for this type of capital situation, you're extending trust. You're saying, hey, will you trust me to go do what I'm going to say? But if you can't trust yourself, and you talked about this as well, you got to know yourself and get to know yourself to where you can trust you.
Yep.
So huge things. Hey, thank you so much, Jonathan. I'm excited for this podcast to be aired. And if you have any other questions, you want to direct them to him, where's the best place to reach you? Obviously, YouTube has tons of content to hear you. Where's the best place to reach you or your programs or whatever?
Usually social, believe it or not. So if you want, the website's integratedbusinessfinancing.com. If you look up Jonathan Fodera on Instagram or Facebook, I'm there. Same thing with LinkedIn. And just shoot me a message. Happy to help, answer any questions, and hopefully help you guys grow your business and make that impact in your communities.
Okay, awesome. Love it. We'll catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy Show.
Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me. And if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.